There we go. Good. Okay. Yeah. Today, I would like to discuss and present the idea of pair programming. It occurred to me that this could be a good topic to discuss today because we are planning a collaborative work on Thursday and Friday. So I thought that maybe kind of introducing the idea might prove helpful, and in particular because it seems to be more complex than it apparently is. So have anyone in the meeting today ever heard of this idea of pair programming? Just to know if yes and no.
I've heard of it.
I've done it with Claire, but I never heard of it.
Cool. Yeah, well, me too. So I heard a lot, or I've read a lot about it in books and things, because it seems to be one of the ideas that kind of took off in this way of programming. Is called Agile, and some people love it, but it looks like it also comes with lots of challenges, as we're gonna discuss in a moment. So people have been kind of trying to figure out how to make the best of it. So to begin with, I want to point to first of all, sorry, can you confirm that you are seeing my screen? I'm now highlighting a link here.
Yes,
we see it.
Great, cool. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So the talk is basically coming from a blog by Martin Fowler. He's a very prominent programmer and an excellent writer. This blog post is written by two other people, two other invited guests. And like an overview, we're going to kind of reflect on these dot points. Basically that there are some benefits, but sometimes they're not immediately obvious. Actually, it seems that the payoff of pair programming is in the mid to long term. Also, that it is not as simple as just putting two people together in front of a screen. Also, that it's good to acknowledge that sometimes it feels uncomfortable, and I would like to discuss in what situation it does and what situations it doesn't, and how to make it more enjoyable. But in the opinion of these very experienced programmers, it is a vital component of collaborative work when you're working in teams, and it leads to very high quality software. So it might be kind of worthwhile considering it. So this image kind of shows what peer programming would look like, what Klaus experienced, and I'd done it informally as well without even knowing that I was doing pair programming. This idea of two people working in one project, one computer, sometimes it's just one keyboard and one mouse, and one person is kind of more taking the role of the navigator, where you kind of think of the problem at a kind of more holistic level, trying to predict what problems there might be, what bugs there are, might be introducing the code, but the navigator does not work at the level of what is this particular character I'm entering on the keyboard. In contrast, the driver is that person who is at that particular time typing things on the keyboard, so they are kind of losing a little bit of the perspective of the forest to focus on that one tree that they're trying to tackle. So they do pay a lot of attention to detail. So one takes like a more strategic view, and the other one a more tactical view to the same problem. And the idea is that you switch roles very frequently. So there are at least two styles that I wanted to discuss because they're kind of very appropriate for depending on different circumstances. So the idea of ping pong is one style of peer programming, where basically one of the two in the pair first writes a test before they actually write the code. So the test will fail because the code has not been written. So you say something like, function F returns a data frame, but function S doesn't exist. So if you run that test, the test will fail. And then immediately that person passes the keyword to the other person, and the other person writes the code to make F return a data frame, for example. And then the test moves from failing, which is color green, color red in all testing environments. You get like a horrible red message saying, this test failed. And then, once the test pass, then it goes to green, and the person who has just made the code, the test pass, writes the failing test for the other person, and then they keep moving. So it's very short cycles, writing the minimum amount of code that you need to pass a test, and then writing the minimum amount of code that you need to write a test that then kind of drives the software development. So that's one approach. And on the other hand, that one approach obviously seems to need two people very familiar with, at least with, what it means to write a test and what it means to write code that makes that test pass. So two people with a relatively similar level of familiarity with the software development strategies. And then strong pair programming is kind of almost like an opposite on the other side of the spectrum, where usually it is more suitable for situations where someone new needs to be inducted to a project, and someone new can, the person can be new in many ways. So, you can be a very experienced programming, but maybe you are particularly new to that one project, and you would like to kind of get some knowledge from someone else's brain. So in this mode, in strong style pairing, the idea is that for an idea to go from your head into the computer, it must go first through someone else's hands. So that is, okay, the person who in this particular situation has more knowledge that the other one wants to absorb, then that person plays the role of the navigator, gives instructions to the other person, and the other person implements those instructions. Even if the understanding is incomplete, the person still executes, implements the idea, and then once that particular short cycle of implementation ends, the pair can kind of stop, reflect, and try to kind of fill the gaps in the knowledge that might have arisen there. So there is a lot more, but I think that overall we have an intuitive feeling for what this is. So with these two approaches to peer programming, I would like to kind of open the room for a discussion about what are the benefits and challenges, just to make them explicit. So to guide the discussion, I have collected a number of dot points that are described in that blog post. Some are kind of obvious, like knowledge transferring, but others might not be so immediately obvious. So I don't mean that you have to discuss those, but maybe let's focus for now on the benefits, and for 5 minutes we're gonna discuss this. But the first minute, I would like you to just stay quiet, reading the dot points and seeing which one or two catch your attention. And then, in the remaining 4 minutes, I would like to just, hear from everyone to see, what is the benefit that kind of mostly caught your eye. So let's start with a kind of reading and reflecting minute, starting now. About 15 seconds. So, okay, hopefully I would hear from most of us. Anyone would like to go first?
What is WIP?
Work in progress.
What does it mean to keep that low?
Good question. From reading the blog post, which is time consuming, I learned that what they mean is that, if you have 10 things in progress, you might be less efficient than if you have just one thing, because there is a high cost for switching context. So it's this idea of, multitasking versus just single tasking, basically.
Our jargon is like a plate. We always say like, how much is in your plate? So plate and VIP both have it.
Yeah.
So this assumes that this is very productive.
Yeah, basically the idea would be to try keep as many things on the plate as pairs there are. So if we are 10 people, we split in pairs, then we have 5 teams. So we should have only 5 problems at any single time that we are tackling. If we have more than that, we tend to lose efficiency because we have to kind of continuously, change from one project context to the other to try, make any progress. And that change costs time and wastes energy. Any other one that caught your eye?
I mean, I think they're all quite relevant to what we do and also highlight some issues we have. We have a lot of work on our plate typically, and that's why we're losing focus. And also there's too little for I principle being applied. So like a lot of code written by single people, which is then basically lost because nobody else knows where to find it and what it does exactly. So I think this actually sounds like it could solve a lot of our problems, except for that we need to have more time from people. But like in the long run, it could be still super beneficial because you always have 2 people who know how to use the code. So you have the knowledge sharing and the collective code ownership, which I find directly like jumping into my face. And the fast onboarding of new team members is obviously additional benefit. When I'm not sure if that's like in some cases that might work, in some cases it's not, because we often onboard people where we also train them on writing code. And if you do this directly, maybe it's not super beneficial. But I think there's a lot of benefits that I like a lot, that I see beneficial for our organization.
I also, in the discussion of benefits, some of those benefits are clearly come with a flip side, which are the challenges that we are going to discuss in a moment. So it was great that they are so tightly linked.
Had a comment?
Sure, yeah, I was just gonna say that I think the other thing is that often I notice there's someone has a lot of knowledge about a data set and another person is coding relating to that data set, and there isn't knowledge sharing. Like Klaus and I experienced this past couple of weeks, where it's like if we had been there together, we could have solved it quicker than finding an issue later, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's a problem now.
Great point. Yeah, I think that sometimes we feel that I think the perception of what strategy is pays off or not. Our perception of if it's paying off or not depends a lot on what time scale we are kind of looking at. And sometimes it does feel more productive. Okay, just leave me alone. I want to get this stuff done out of the way. But then in the long run, we are shooting ourselves on the foot because we are not spending the time to share that knowledge with someone else. So yeah, that's totally valid. At the time of doing it might feel a little slower, but then probably the payoff in the midterm or long term is way higher. So sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm pretty skeptical of this idea, to be honest. But I end up doing this here quite frequently, but not in this like formal, like let's sit down and pair program for a half an hour thing, but more like, hey, can you help me with this? And then we sit down and basically do this. So I think it works well in those cases, at least. And one thing that Klaus kind of mentioned that I feel like is not quite on this list, at least not the way I would imagine, but when you have an organization where everyone's working separately and people are working on their code, it becomes like maintain a sort of style across your code base can be very difficult if you're not really looking at each other's codes very often. And I wonder if this would have a interesting benefit if you frequently had people pairing up with different people within an organization and you got a little more, maybe this would have some impact overall with the code being more stylistically in line with each other. So that's kind of like 2 modes of thinking combined, but I think that was more of like the real-time kind of aspect of it. I was thinking more like a sort of long-term effect organization-wide of having some more unified approach to doing things.
Yeah, it's like aligning the code style basically, which is not mentioned necessarily.
Shall we move to some of the challenges that, and maybe if we have some time at the end, we can come back to whatever is most interesting.
Do you want to do it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I'll give about a minute to kind of read and reflect on what we read on screen. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit to see if some of these challenges we already thought about or is something new. So about a minute starting now.
No time for yourself.
Very launching.
What's meant with power dynamics is if there's like people who have like different, like who are differently high in the hierarchy, that you have power dynamics between the two people who are pairing, or
Yeah, and deciding what should be done.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the article goes, you know, we have a few more seconds probably while I give some context for what that dot point is. The article goes actually in very interesting branches of that phrase. It talks about, you know, when you have diversity at multiple levels, you know, diversity in hierarchies, diversity in gender, diversity, whatever you want to think about, that might cause a disbalance and one person to maybe conform with the decisions that the other person made, other than just being more critical about the process. So yes, go ahead, and I would like to hear from those who haven't talked yet, and whoever wants.
I can definitely speak to different skill levels because I'm rather a beginner in data analysis, and I try to sit down and understand what these codes mean, what it does. And I often find that, you know, a lot of us have a lot on our plate already, so it's difficult to find the time to go through them together. And it, for me personally, it'd be really nice if there's like a standard so that learning process is faster.
So you think, my interpretation is that you're acknowledging that in some of the organization details, you feel that you need to acquire a few more skills. And do you feel comfortable with this strategy, or do you think that that would be like too overwhelming?
I think in the long run it would be more beneficial, because in the long run, in the short run, it might take more energy to like bring everybody on board and establish the process. But in the long run, I can see that it could be a good challenge.
I think that I'd like to kind of bridge what you just said with the comment by Vincent, because I think that, you know, his point was great in showing that, you know, people have different skills, different kinds of skills, and, you know, you might not be very familiar with, you know, the particular application of something, but then you might be, you might bring like a completely new perspective and new knowledge in an area that no one else has. So I'm probably only in kind of exposing these two brains to solve the same problem is that we can actually learn what other people can bring as a complement to what we already know. I love that. Someone else, please.
I definitely imagine it being exhausting, but I'm like a hyper introverted person, so it seems really scary to me. But yeah, I mean, also like to what Uni was saying, you were saying, I've been experienced situations where in both cases, like also where like I was like an experienced programmer, but there was someone like contextually about the thing that we're working on knows a lot more about it. So like I can quickly code up blah, 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 and print out summary tables of like some statistical thing. And, but the person that knew more about what we were trying to achieve with the chapter we were writing, them like looking over my shoulder and like, well, can you look at like what the, you know, what this aggregation is or something. And then they wouldn't have been able to do it really fast, but I wouldn't really know what the strategy was. So yeah, I think it can be useful even when two people have different skill sets. Like if you're,
to make a comment that I found really, I mean, simple but yet powerful and useful in the blog, which is this idea that when you do notice that someone kind of has something to say about what's happening on the screen, so maybe, you know, you form a pair, one of the two, you know, about this particular thing that needs to be typed knows more, and that person is navigating. I really like the advice of not giving instructions like right away, sometimes to they mention the 5 seconds rule, to just give some room for the person doing the driving, actually typing the keyboard, to reflect and to not interrupt their thought flow. So I like that, there is this little pause that you give room to people to kind of reflect, and also because the iteration should be short, you should be, switching the keywords relatively frequently. That is also like a good stopping point to reflect about what has just happened, instead of kind of interrupting each other and transforming this session into a whole micromanagement experience. That one likes. Let me scroll down for a second because I want to see where we're going.
Quickly before you move on, Pranav had a comment from like the first section, so I want to give him a minute to.
Yeah, so I see like a two benefits. Like one is like a short term. So let's say whenever like projects are on like a deadline and we need to build like a rapid prototype, like for example, or we need to test like a different approach. In that case, like this pair programming would work based like a navigator and the driver, like whoever is like a good programmer, that would be the driver, and person with like good knowledge about like specific project, that would be the navigator, and that would work the base like let's say if we have like a short-term product or like developing a prototype. And also in terms of like let's say long-term, so that would be beneficial to the driver as well. So for example, let's say if we do the like a pair programming for a multiple project for a single person, and the navigator gets changed and the driver stays the same, in that way like the driver gets the like idea about all the projects, and that can again come back to the first point, like whenever there is like a deadline or something, the driver already has an idea, and in that case, like on the during the project deadline, if we do the same pair programming, that would be much beneficial in terms of like if we want to achieve like a deadline or something.
I love the idea that, at least by considering, I particularly find it a bit scary. But the few times I have coded with someone, like for example, Jackson has coded sometimes live with me. We learned a lot. Or the few times I'm kind of debugging a problem together with someone. This whole act of articulating what you're trying to do, sometimes in your own head, clicks something and helps you solve the problem. So we need to wrap up because we are only 3 minutes away. Honestly, what I had a program is not like anything burning. It's just a reflection. Maybe I would love to spend those couple of minutes to reflect on. Maybe I would like to hear from someone like Klaus, who, because of his management role, could be kind of a pivot in making this happen or not. So how is this received by you, Klaus? Do you think it would be worthwhile giving it a try, or not? And with that, then I let the room open for discussions. We have 2 minutes for that, and then before we say bye.
I think for sure. I mean, if people like feel comfortable in doing it, I think it's totally worth it to give it a try. If people don't feel comfortable, we shouldn't force it on them. So if CJ doesn't feel like that's the thing for him, I don't want to force him to do it. But like, for example, on Thursday and Friday, we will probably do it anyways, and I will try to do it with Vincent, and we'll see if it's beneficial for us. Yeah, I mean, if Jackson and you, for example, figure out that this is the best way forward for you, I'd rather have 2 people working, like, so spending double the amount of HR basically on a certain topic, but then having code that is super reliable, and also like 2 people who I can ask for that, then having 1 person spending probably a bit more time actually on it. And in the end, that person leaves the organization and we are lost. But maybe that's a very current topic.
Okay, so we have 1 minute, and Taylor already advertised that he's waiting for his attendees. From my end, that's all. I say bye. Anyone else wants to say something, or we just say goodbye, see you next time?
I think we're done here. Or
Thanks a lot for
Thanks.
that. Actually,
Thanks
I
a lot.
really appreciate that. That was a good topic, I think, especially with your context that we will probably use it in 2 days' time.
Good. Yeah,
Yeah.
the blog is a great resource for learning more. Thank you very much. And sorry for the sharp cut, but I'm trying to stick to time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul. Ciao.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.